It's time to experience Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast.
Hey, kid, you want a toy?
What does the man know about toys?
Action figures each sold separately. Batteries not included.
With Kung Fu Grip, the hands that grip.
I have 3 of each. 1 to display, 1 to open, and 1 just in case.
Why do you keep all your toys in boxes? How do you play with them?
I don't. I collect them.
You're not a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. You are a toy!
Action figures and playsets for ages 6 and up. Way up!
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about FoMO and collecting, but before we get there, we had, unfortunately, a couple sad announcements. I lost a close friend who listened to the show over in the UK recently. It's the second friend I've lost in less than a year in our kind of Star Wars family. So I just wanted to send some thoughts and prayers out to his family. It's been tough. And then obviously Brian and I both thinking about the people in the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people themselves. My stepmom and stepsisters are actually from Ukraine. So that one hits really close to home for me. So I know we have international listeners. Maybe this will bring somebody some peace if they're listening in the Ukraine. Just know that we're with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself, Chris. And once again, as I've said to you individually and personally, I'm so sorry to hear. It's always tough to lose part of that extended family that we have within our fandom and within the stuff that we love. And it's always fun to share that with those who love it as well. And we end up building relationships with those individuals and they become family themselves. So it's always tough to lose one of those family members. So yeah. Appreciate that. Absolutely. So as we transition into kind of our main talk today in our episode 11, yes, we made it to 11 episodes, give or take a couple of specials along the way. And today we're going to be talking about the term FOMO, but before we jump into that, we're going to talk a little bit about, because this is the quote unquote toy fair season in this time of pandemic life, where we get our news in spurts over a good 14 plus days, right? Instead of getting it all in one fell swoop of a weekend of toy fair. And we've gotten a good mix of information from a variety of toy companies. And I think one of the biggest things, big picture, before we go into some of the details of things we're really excited about, some basic things I know Chris and I want to talk about are some things we noticed as trends across industry. And one of those things were prices, right? We saw prices going up on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hasbro made their announcement that their lines were going up for the second time in under a year because of rising energy costs and transportation and global supply chain issues that continue to plague us. But it's not just them, it's across the board. We're seeing everybody with price increases. And it's kind of interesting because I'm starting to hear from people that that's going to be have an impact on their collecting going forward, whether they're going to get more picky with things. I've even heard some people saying that, they feel like they're being priced out of the hobby. And then on top of that, people are saying, well, if you're going to raise prices, then some of these lines that have some QC issues, and in particular, I'm thinking about the Lightning collection from Hasbro, which has had quite a few in recent memory.
Sure.
Why are we paying, you need to get those under control if you want us to pay $25 a figure, and get things correct on those. So it's interesting because I think this is really going to make people look at how much they collect and where they're putting their dollars, which is going to play into what we talk about later.
Exactly. And I think one other thing I do want to touch upon, and we saw this with Hasbro more than any other company, was this idea of the fake deluxe figure. And what I mean by fake deluxe is a figure that had the same accessories in the past that was not considered a deluxe figure, which means a price point typically of over $30. Like a Boba Fett or a Mandalorian character, that comes with a jetpack and the jetpack accessories. In the past, that was not considered a deluxe figure. but now they're repackaging it and laying it out differently so that it looks like a deluxe figure and are charging exponentially more for it. So that's one thing that's also turning off people. I wanted to mention too, that's becoming a common issue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. And along with the Boba Fett and maybe even the Cobb Vanth, which is like, I kind of think where this started, where we were like,
Right.
that's not really a deluxe figure.
Exactly.
And they sold it as paint apps, but also that Dark Trooper figure, which I argue that should be a regular wave figure, not a $32 or $33 figure. And I think for the record, I passed on it. I think it looks great, but at that price, I drew a line in the sand.
I mean, and I hate to compare, but I am. I mean, when I look at a McFarlane Violator figure, which was in our top figure awards of the year this past year, that figure was in the $30 range. I mean, that figure, but yet the deluxe Cobb Vanth is the same price. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the other thing, and I've talked about this as well, is for, Valaverse Action Force line for $32, what you're getting, and you're getting a figure stand, which is something that I don't understand why we can't get figure stands. But you're also getting
if it's a Walgreens exclusive, you'll get one though.
Yeah, that's true. Which is weird that they did it that way, but
right,
you're getting more accessories for your money. And then what's weird is, and Bobby Valla from Action Force, from Valaverse, he used to work for Hasbro, and he's talked about the perceived value, how Hasbro has this thing about across all their lines of perceived value. But you look at what you get with a Power Rangers Lightning Collection figure, what you get with a G.I. Joe figure, and then you look at what you get with a Marvel Legends or a Star Wars, and you're getting a lot less with those licensed, products that they have to pay for a licensing fee versus their homegrown, or in the case of Power Rangers, the one that they own now.
That's
and
correct.
So the perceived value is a real thing. So it's going to be interesting. There was quite a bit of discussion, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I think that it is going to force people to make some tougher decisions. And then I think it's also, I think people are going to have to figure out where is their line, how much are they willing to pay before they tap out.
I agree. And now I'm going to weirdly transition us to where no one has gone before, and that is the final frontier of Star Trek. On today, which is we're recording this on a Thursday, the opening Thursday of the Picard season 2, I should say, is that we're getting Star Trek's figures coming back in not just the form of Reaction with Super 7, which they've been doing a pretty darn good job of, but in 5-inch articulated Playmates figures like they used to do back in the day, which I still have a few of from my childhood, along with my transporter.
Yeah, I mean, Playmates is back, and let's not forget that line went for a long time, and it was immensely popular in its day. And some of those figures were pretty hard to find in the day. And I'll argue that now, if you're looking to collect I guess at this point you could consider them vintage, but if you're looking to collect a vintage line, that's a good line to get into, because you can pick up a lot of them for good prices.
Oh yeah, you can find those in your con piles for 2 for $10 or 3 for $10 figures. You'll find a lot of those Playmate Star Trek figures. And they made them for each series, as you know. I mean, we had a number of great TV series, from Next Generation to Deep Space Nine to Voyager. There were a lot of great opportunities, and even Enterprise. But Enterprise was more in the Art Asylum time at that point. But Playmates is getting back into it, not just with your classic traditional vintage. So they're not just remaking what's already been done. They're actually doing figures from the new series as well, like Discovery. So it'll be nice to see some new characters, new species, and different kinds of Federation and characters, and it'll be cool to see all the different lines that they do now with the new Playmates.
Yeah, and they're going to be doing a Starship Enterprise, as they did. They did some of the vehicles in the past, and they're going to.
It's dangerous for me.
It is, because I looked at it too. What's even more dangerous than that one is the Playmobil Enterprise. I
Oh,
don't know if
don't
you've
tell
seen
me
that
about
one.
that one. I know I have all of the Back to the Future Playmobil pieces. The only one I didn't get was the truck, because it was the truck, and it came with two of the same figures that were in another pack. But I bought all the two advent calendars from the first movie and the third movie. I bought the second movie edition that goes with, that gives you all of the additions to add to the DeLorean to make it hover converted, basically, for the second film. Including some backdrops for the chase scene with the hoverboards in the second film. So, and obviously the original DeLorean set. So those are amazing. I can't say enough about Playmobil and what they've been doing. And I know Chris pre-ordered something Playmobil.
I did. So I have the Knight Rider set coming, which is Michael Knight and Kit, and it looks really, really well done. And then just recently, the A-Team van came out, which has kind of been tempting because there's not a lot of A-Team stuff out there, and they come with the figures, and they do a good job of representing the figures. Personally, we've got Ghostbusters, you got Back to the Future, you got A-Team, and now you got Knight Rider. Personally, they're hitting these 80s vehicles. I'm kind of hoping they do an Airwolf.
There it is. I was waiting for it. I knew you would miss the opportunity to mention an Airwolf Playmobil.
Nope. Got to get it in there.
Hey, if we got Wong made, I think we can get you an Airwolf Playmobil. So,
Oh, that would be awesome.
Oh my gosh. So let's flip back to Toy Fair for a moment, and let's talk a little bit about the items that we thought were most interesting to us, that we're most excited about. Obviously, I'm going to talk to the NECA reveals, because there was a whole ton of TMNT pieces, including a tease for an event they're going to be doing with Target called Haulathon, where they're going to be involving people like Elvira and Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Ninja Turtles, and doing some really cool giveaways and cool announcements of exclusive type figures. But on top of that, they announced some stuff for the movie line, some stuff for the Toon line, and then also, for the first time, they showcased new figures going back to their bread and butter, where they started with a limited license with the Mirage comic base figures, which are the original look of the Turtles from the comics in the mid and late 80s, under the Mirage Studios brand, which is, if you know anything about Turtles, Mirage is is a company they made themselves in order to publish the Turtles. So it's kind of a joke. It's Mirage because it's not real, but it is real because they made it. It's a joke on play on words there. But Mirage Studios in Mirage Comics are the versions, and they showcase finally in a full prototype the Usagi Yojimbo figure for the first time. And this will be the first time that we see a NECA style or Toon style figure of a character that was an adjacent character to the Turtles universe, part of the Turtles universe, but also owned, the rights are owned and licenses owned, not only by working with Nickelodeon, but also with Stan Sakai, who still owns the original rights to his own character, which is Usagi Yojimbo. So that was pretty exciting. They teased a little bit about a sewer lair, and they teased a little bit about a van, party wagon, but nothing in particular, nothing in specifics. But we do know that probably those two things are coming in the near future. They keep teasing us a bit more each event. So we're hoping eventually that will be a reality, and we hope the price tag won't be too astronomical.
Yeah, now wasn't there pre-orders today for some Turtle stuff too, as we're recording this?
Yeah, so I believe they just finished up pre-orders the last 2 weeks for the Army Builder sets, which involved the Turtle Gang, which were a bunch of guys. The Toon series, the original 87 series, is a special, crazy series, okay? There's some really odd characters in this. And one of them was the Turtle Gang, which is like an apple bottom dumpling gang kind of feel, where they dressed up. They basically imitated that they were the Ninja Turtles, and they started robbing banks. And people actually believed they were the Turtles, even though all they wore was a Halloween-looking turtle costume, basically what you would see nowadays, and a paper bag over their heads. Yes. So, and also Zack the Fifth Turtle and Smash. who was the leader of this turtle gang. And those were the figures that were that just went up and just went down.
You know, what's interesting, Brian, is I've been making my way through Power Rangers in Space, and they have that 2-part episode where the in space Power Rangers team up with the Ninja Turtles. Not a great episode or arc. The turtles don't look quite right. And it's just weird that the turtles were there, but I watched that episode recently. So, figured I'd just throw that in there while we're talking turtles. But the other thing I saw from NECA was the Defenders of the Earth. We're going to get the second set of those with Mandrake, Lothar, and I can't remember the robot's name who works for Ming, but those all looked pretty good to me. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't pick up Ming and Flash, but I know you can still pick them up online. So I may still try and complete that set. It's a small set, so it's kind of tempting.
And as we talk about this, I'm going to finish out all of the pre-orders that they've announced here. Not just TMNT, but other things too. One other TMNT thing that's pretty awesome. I mentioned Mirage Comics. If anyone in the TMNT community has been following the Last Ronin comic, which is inspired by the original writing of Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, the two original co-creators, and Eastman's been heavily working on it alongside Ben Bishop and some other artists as well that I can't escape all the artists' names on the top of my head. But it's been a group of 5 or 6 artists working on this amazing cyberpunk story in the future as kind of like this Logan-esque story, if you will, like we had it with Wolverine, but for one of the last remaining turtles trying to basically make right what all of his brothers lost their lives for. And they're making an action figure. NECA is making an action figure as well as Playmates. So we're going to be getting a version of the Last Ronin in plastic form. I believe both the pre-orders are up for an unarmored and armored version of the Last Ronin right now on your local retailers, meaning your Big Bad Toy Stores, your Entertainment Earths, as well as your comic book shops. We'll be able to order from. We also got to look at an Elton John figure. Yeah, they got the likeness to Elton John, and they're doing an Elton John retro figure, which is usually their 8-inch style fabric-based figures. And they also are doing an Ultimate Alf, as in the guy who loves to eat cats, that alien from Melmac. Yeah. And we also got 2 new Predator announcements that people were excited about. But then also from the TMNT, I mentioned they're getting more into the comics. Mirage Comics character Renette, who is the one that sends the turtles through time back in issue 8. I remember that. And then also we're going to get some horror accessory sets to go along. Like the Mummy is going to be getting a coffin and chest accessory set to go along with the original Universal Monsters Mummy. We're also going to get an accessory set. I know Chris and I have been talking about this. There should be more accessory sets. Well, NECA has 2 coming. The other one is for the Gremlins. And then also we got some reveals for the rest of the main I can't say that word today. Gargoyles characters coming out. So we saw reveals for all the rest of those. So a lot of amazing stuff coming up. And I mentioned about the Target month-long event Haulathon that's going to be this month in March. So keep your eye on that at your Targets. They're going to be announcing stuff on the website, I believe, haulathon.com. So you can get a better look at all the different stuff, not just TMNT, horror-related, everything that's NECA. NECA is really trying to double down on their partnership with Target.
Yeah, I know that Target's doing an event too. I don't know if that's part of this Haulathon, if that's a Target thing or a NECA thing, but I know that when on the Fan First, what day of the week was that? Thursday last week, the G.I. Joe brand team had mentioned that the couple of the exclusives, the Tiger Force and Python Patrol ones that they just showed us the only digital renders for, are going to be going up in March on Target as well. So I wonder if that's like they've done in the past. It's like a week-long event and certain things go up on certain days. And I believe I've heard rumblings that there's something coming for Walmart too. So this is about the time of the year after Toy Fair where that stuff drops. Before I talk Hasbro, I'm going to kind of bring our wives in here real quick. And that's, something I thought was interesting was the Boss Fight Studios acquires the Strawberry Shortcake license. Did you see that?
I did. Thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, I asked Sarah, I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, I don't know. I'd have to see these in person. She's like, the proportions look a little weird, but she's like, that could be something cool. So, I know that the Care Bears is kind of going strong. And so, we're going to show the ladies that listen to the show a little love here too. So you have, or guys, I guess if you collect it, if you're guys too, that's possible. We have bronies.
Oh yeah.
So seeing Strawberry Shortcake out there, and then, Care Bears. And as you know, we've talked about a little bit, my wife collects some of the modern ponies, not the modern ones. They're the modern throwbacks. I guess what you would equate to the retro. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah. My wife is all into the 40th anniversary of Care Bears. There's a lot of merchandise coming out this year celebrating its 40th anniversary. I posted up on our Instagram just a week ago. We found some of the first series 2 of the mystery Care Bear figures, the small PVC figures. Those have started to hit stores. I believe the I think I Care Bear is a new one that's gonna, and most of the US exclusive Care Bears, plush Care Bears are coming out, are all Walmart exclusive. So if anyone who is a Care Bear fan, keep an eye out on your local Walmart. Those should be hitting this month. So any of the new ones that are coming out this year, the 2 new exclusives, one is I Care Bear, and the other one, I can't remember for the life of me, but it does have a rainbow and a sun on it and other things. I'm not trying to make fun here. I just honestly can't remember the name of the other one, but there are 2 pretty good ones coming out in near future.
Yeah. So, Hasbro's done quite a few fan first events since the beginning of the year. The only brand team we haven't heard from yet is the Power Rangers brand team. And I'm okay with that because there was such
a lot last year.
Yeah, there was such a large amount last year, and so much of it got pushed. I actually just got and we'll talk about this a little bit later. I just got a bunch of Lightning Collection stuff, but so we haven't heard from them, which is, I think they're trying to get caught up, which is fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. But we've heard from the Star Wars brand team, the Marvel brand team, and the G.I. Joe brand team. I think that pretty much covers the teams. I know they revealed some stuff for Fortnite as well. But I think, Marvel Legends, solid as always, although character, so there are some new characters in there and some characters we don't know.
They're getting deep cut, man. They're getting pretty deep cut now.
When you get into, I can't remember his name, but he was the one who started the whole Civil War from the New Warriors. What is his name? Like Speedball or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're doing him, and they're doing a lot of the other characters. Getting some deep cuts. Blue Marvel, which is a character I didn't know anything about. I had to look up. And then, of course, perhaps Star Wars. The Black Series kind of still just kind of limping along. That we talked about it, Brian, off air. That Black K figure, what a disaster.
Oh gosh, Black Chrysanthemum.
Yeah,
oh gosh. And then I remember I sent to you within a day, someone had made a better custom figure and had 3D printed it in less than 24 hours after Hasbro showcase.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's pretty sad.
I have friends that are, they're kind of all in on Hasbro Star Wars Black Series and TVC, and, they'll probably still get it, but they were just like,
and why are they going to get it?
Well, yeah, exactly. We'll get into it.
We'll get into that in a moment. Yeah.
But, we all agreed it was just lazy. And then, some of the other stuff, we really knew about for a while. We knew that Ahsoka was coming. We knew that, the Client figure was coming, and
right.
It wasn't, they showed us some digital
13 years later, we get the Client figure.
And that's aimed strictly at collectors, because I don't see kids wanting an old guy who's
I've been really wanting that Client figure. No one was waiting. Now I could finally complete the scene.
Yeah.
Seriously. But
so we got Yeah, so we got those announcements, and we've been saying on this show, and other outlets have been saying, like, TVC for the last 2 years has really been getting the love with the amount of figures, and they've been putting out waves of harder to find ones that were kind of like really hard to find. In fact, my Walmart ones, I missed the Luminari Andoli and Aliyah Sakura. They are in my mailbox. They were delivered today. I didn't
Oh,
get to the
fantastic.
mailbox
That's
today.
cool.
Yeah, I was actually shocked when I get the shipping notice that Walmart didn't cancel it on me.
Now let's see how they arrived.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pictures online and had some friends, in our
Crushed
text
in an
group,
envelope.
crushed, just bent, yeah, destroyed. So we'll see. But the TVC has gotten has really gotten the love, and it seems like.
And let's give credit where credit's due on the TVC as well.
Well, that
play
yes,
set, right?
That's where
Let's
I'm
give
going.
him credit.
Yes.
Let's give him credit there. That was amazing. I'll let you talk about it. Go for it.
So when they revealed that, we've been saying for roughly, like I said, a couple years that TVC has been getting the love. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like, they can manage both lines concurrently.
Right.
It seems like one's really good, well done, and the other one suffers. And for a long time, TVC suffered, but they revealed that play set, and man, is that thing gorgeous. And the brilliance of it is, and this gets me around that rule where I said I'm not collecting Book of Boba Fett and TVC, is they created something that can be used for Book of Boba Fett and Return of the Jedi. And it's just, it's fantastic. It looks terrific. The accessories it comes with, it looks massive. They gave the dimensions, and I was like, I'm going to have to measure on a shelf. I may have to find a bigger space, but that should tell you I did pre-order that.
Yeah, you did.
But the pricing.
Hey, I gotta be fair to Chris, since Chris pre-ordered that. I'm not gonna laugh at him because I pre-ordered a Hot Toys DeLorean. So,
yep, we all have our big ticket items that you gotta have.
So go ahead. What about the price?
So the only thing I was gonna say is I think I'm gonna say at 230. I think it's fairly priced.
Right.
A tad on the high side. I think if they would have been able to get that thing at 199, it would have been gangbusters. I mean, I think it's still going to do phenomenal, but I think at 199, it would have been a real winner.
I agree.
And there was some, people saying that maybe that was the original price point, and then they had the price increase. And I was like, okay, I guess I could see that.
Right.
But here's an interesting point. There was a lot of, and there was nothing to prove this. It was a lot of fan conjecture and people just kind of putting out their own ideas saying, I wonder if this was the next HasLab. Well, as it turns out, that Saturday, a European site, because this is a Pulse exclusive in the US, and I believe in the UK, but in other countries where Pulse isn't around, they're going to be doing these with retailers. And I don't know if it was UK, but it was a European. No, it wasn't UK, but it was a European retailer had put up the pre-order for it, but underneath it said, this is a crowd-funded item, so it may not fund. Something to that effect. There was several sites that posted it. I think Yakface broke the news on it. And so then that talk really heated up. Now, several of the fan sites had their chat with the Star Wars brand team, and Patrick pretty much squashed that rumor. But my response there is, and I'm not picking on the Star Wars brand team, I'm just saying the marketing guy for Star Wars is not going to come out and say, oh yeah, that was supposed to be a HasLab. As soon as he does that, it completely negates HasLab, right?
Yeah.
Because we've said all along that a multi-billion-dollar company should be able to do things like that without having to get the crowdfunding up front. So of course their marketing guy isn't going to say that. And let's be fair, after the slip up of the Rancor, letting the Rancor out of the bag early, I'm sure that Patrick's like really being careful with what he says. But I think it's interesting there because I personally, and this is just my personal opinion, people, so I don't need the hate mail. I think it was supposed to be a HasLab, and they reversed course after the Rancor and the disaster that ended up being the Rancor.
I don't disagree with you. And I'll say this. I mean, if a company like Hot Toys can afford popping out massive DeLoreans without any kind of predilection on how many units they have to sell to break even, or Blitzway is going to put out Ecto ones that are this freaking huge, without the idea of that I have to meet a certain quota, then Hasbro can make a freaking Rancor. I mean, I don't get it. That's just my view on it. But I mean, I think it's, I don't know.
I don't want to go too, like take away too much from the set, because it is a beautiful set, and I am happy we're getting it. And what's funny is that
and it should be released the way it's being released.
Yes,
it shouldn't
exactly.
be a HasLab project. It should never be considered as a HasLab project, because that's not something that is that is difficult for them to make in large quantities.
Agreed. So I think that's a good place to end. That was the best thing that Star Wars showed for me anyway. In there, and it got me excited. But I'm feeling so much more excited about TVC than Black Series these days, and it's hard because I'm trying to get out of that 1/18th scale.
Well, I mean, that's the way they're going to push right now.
Yeah.
But
speaking of 1/18th scale, so we'll jump into the GI Joe, and we've got the return of O-Ring. So nothing new announced, but the Cobra the Cobra 2-pack.
I'm sorry, every time I hear O-Ring, I just think, is this like a birth control or is this an action figure? I'm sorry. I just can't. Every time I hear O-Ring in the response of a figure, I'm like, is this supposed to protect you? Or the GI Joes are protecting you in some way, I guess so.
But the Cobra Trooper pack was up for pre-order, and then the previous items they showed at the very first fan first of the year for Hasbro, Sergeant Stalker, Tomax, and Zaymot, and that Viper 3-pack went up for pre-order. I originally was going to get that Viper pack because I kind of like the officer. I don't need the other two, but then I decided, it's overpriced. It's $90. So they're like $30 a piece. So I'm like, the figures and figures are 25. So you want 30. There's not enough accessories there. So I didn't get those. I got the Crimson Twins, which is, every other podcast, website, fan channel has said the same thing I'm about to say. Why did they make them a individual and not a 2-pack? They're the Crimson Twins. They were never sold individually. So, but the Stalker, I'm kind of hoping they tweak the colors a little bit on the camouflage, but we came out of PulseCon and I praised how they just nailed it for the characters. Right. And this one, I think they had some good characters. But there's we're jumping around quite a bit, and I get it. They're doing Zarana from the Dreadnoughts before we do Buzzer, Ripper, or Torch. So I find that a little bit weird. And then we're getting Dusty and the Crimson Guard. The Crimson Guard looks fantastic. I'm going to have at least a couple of those. And Dusty, I'm kind of on the fence about how Dusty looks. He's very, and I'll just say this. So when the line first started, that first wave or 2 waves, everyone was like, these are too sci-fi, the gold, this, that. And then now they're leaning really heavy into that classic aesthetic. And now you're getting people that are saying, oh, it's too classic. It looks too much like the original. And so I'm like, man, and I get it. We hear that, if you've been a fan for Star Wars,
make them all happy.
Yes, exactly. So, I'm actually one of those people that wanted them to lean into that classic aesthetic. So I'm okay. Yeah. Dusty kind of leans into that, but it's not the greatest. I think that I hope that, once we get a prototype, it looks a little bit better than the digital rendering. And then we're getting into, Dr. Mindbender, which I'll get. Not my favorite character as a kid, but I did play with him. He was in my lineup. We're getting Kamakura, which I have no idea who that character is. I understand he's a comic book ninja, but they need to reuse that mold. But they're leaning really heavily into this Python Patrol and Tiger Force, and I was out of GI Joe by the time those came out. I liked GI Joe when it was very grounded in the military aspect at the early part of the line. When they started getting into some of those other things, I was kind of, I was already out of the line, but I would see it and I'd be like, even as a kid. But I'll probably pass on the Python Patrol Viper, but they're doing Tiger Force Recondo and Bazooka. And this tells me that eventually we'll get them in the line. But, me being impatient or maybe having a little bit of FOMO, I want those characters, now. It's the same thing with Outback and Tiger Force. So I think the Joe Tiger Force works better than the Python Patrol. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. It wasn't like with Storm Shadow, the Cobra Officer and Spirit, where they just knocked it out of the park. I kind of feel like, it's not bad. It's just, they're jumping around a lot. And there's so many characters that we still haven't gotten to. I'd rather they do the original versions first, but I get, they got to get their money out of the molds, all that good stuff. And they're jumping around to kind of please everybody. I'd like to see some more Joe characters though, because we have a ton of Cobra.
Yeah.
So my opinion there was, it was kind of, it wasn't, it was good, but it wasn't like PulseCon where they knocked it out of the park, in my opinion.
And one last thing I'll say about Toy Fair is I do want to mention a company that I think has a niche that does really well with, and I think still continues to put high quality stuff out, and it's continuing to broaden their licenses now, is Mezco. And I want to say I was really impressed with their announcements. Digging into your area, Chris, with two GI Joe 1/12 collective figures that looked stunning, and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, hitting you right in the heart.
Yeah, and those are, I think that's like somebody had said that's like the fifth. Snake Eyes is the fifth, and Storm Shadow will be the sixth figure now that they've done, because they've done Destro.
That's right.
They've done Roadblock.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about, because I know you texted me when you saw that, and you're like, oh, I thought about it and looked at it. I just,
you saw it came with timber.
I know, I saw that. At least they did it out of the gate.
Uh-huh. You don't have to pay extra for it. It comes with the original figure. That's the one thing about Mezco, is they put it all up front. You're paying more, but you're getting it all. And then the other big announcement, which they waited for the last announcement of their Toy Fair, where they literally blew the socks off of what it was already a TMNT packed Toy Fair from the standpoint of NECA and Playmates and Super 7, was they announced they're doing all 4 Turtles in the 1/12 collective scale. And they've been teasing that for over 2 years, Chris. They teased it at Toy Fair in 2020 with like one random little image with a green hand sticking out of a sewer. And 2 years later, we got the end result of that tease at this year's Toy Fair. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I saw that and I immediately thought, ooh, Brian's probably going to be in on that.
Yeah, it's going to be hard not to be. Mezco makes stunning. And from the look of one of the images they didn't release a lot of the look of it, but just one teaser image, it looks to be true to the original comic aesthetic of the Turtles, which is going to look phenomenal in the Mezco tooling. It's and you can't even imagine what kind of accessories are going to come with the Turtles too, because there's going to be chock full. If it's anything like they did with the Fantastic Four set and the Ghostbuster set that they've released previously. So yeah, that's exciting for me. That was the highlight for me, on top of obviously the DeLorean being announced and me having to figure out a lot of financial payments on a massive item.
I will say this about Mezco, and this is the difference between Mezco, or even a Mafex, the more expensive, is that you are getting the ultimate version of that character. Yeah. So it's coming with all the possible accessories you could need. You're not having to go back and be like, it's the definitive version of that character. Yep. And that's where, I think that they excel. So you don't have to go back and constantly double dip and whatever. The only thing that would, the reason why they would need to go back and do it later is because better technology for articulation and
Exactly.
whatnot. But they nail it right away.
They
But
really do.
speaking of, more higher premium lines, not quite as high as Mezcor or Mafex, but I was really impressed with the SH Figure Arts Love and Thunder Thors. I thought that those looked really fantastic and very tempting. I'm very tempted on those two.
Yeah. Figure Arts makes some great stuff. And what's great about Figure Arts, and I don't think they get enough credit for this particular piece, is they are very seldom late with releasing their figures, even during a pandemic. They are always on time.
Yeah, that's we're still waiting for some stuff from Mafex.
They're supposed to both release this month. So, but let's keep in mind Mafex did have a COVID outbreak in January. So at their facility. So that's understandable, at least for this reason, for this time.
Oh, I almost forgot to mention they're with GI Joe. They're doing a GI Joe Transformers crossover. Doesn't interest me. They did that in the comics when I was a kid. I was never a huge fan of the Joe Transformers crossover. They're two separate universes to me. I was not one of those kids that mixed my toys up. I played in the universe that I played in. So I was playing with,
you didn't mix your peas and your mashed potatoes.
Nope, I didn't roll like that.
All right, Sergeant.
That maybe, but with Transformers, the only
remember
other
the movie Toys?
Yeah.
Let's bring it full circle. We have a show about toys. There is literally a reference in a movie about toys where there is a military guy making toys, and the other guy wants to make imaginative things that combine elements together, and the general does not. And he sits there with his food. You remember LL Cool J? His character sitting there with his food. He's like, I don't like my peas to touch. I don't want them to touch. I want them here, and I want those there. So that is Chris right there.
That is me.
There you go. I just compared you to the ladies love Cool J. So, I mean, it's all good.
Yeah, I'll take that comparison any day of the week. So, as we've kind of finished up that, the toy fair, kind of the highlights. I mean, we can't possibly cover it all, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of it. But Brian, what have you acquired most recently?
Let's see. Not much. Mostly my stuff is just kind of waiting on pre-order, like most of collectors right now. I don't think there's anything physically I've gotten other than I did pick up, and it wasn't for me, it was for a gift for a friend. I picked up the Ultimate Edition Mattel WWE Undertaker and Kane figures as a gift for a friend of mine. But
I've seen those.
Yeah, that's about it. I haven't really picked up much else. Maybe a couple of Hot Wheels items the other day. I found the X-Jet, the black X-Jet, the brand new black X-Jet. I found one, and I found one of the new Enterprise figure. Hot Wheels.
I saw that, and yesterday I haven't posted it on our pages yet, but I found the original series Batmobile, which I already have, but it's like it's condensed. It's like a little chunky version. It's really cool. I'm like, I don't need another Batmobile, but it's kind of it's in that like chunky aesthetic. I'll have to take a picture and post it because it's hard to describe, but I picked it up. But other than that, so for me, it's been the other way around. It's like we've talked about how we kind of go through these, like nothing's coming for a while, and then all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, everything hits kind of in chunks. And I just had that happen. So I got my Action Force 2A, Wave 2A, which actually came in early. It wasn't supposed to be here till like mid-March. Bobby got it and got them all out by the end of February, and I got mine. I have not had a chance to open them yet. That is on my list of things to hopefully do this weekend. I'm really excited about those. I got a bunch of Lightning collection, including the figure that I have been, and it's not even a Ranger, but I have been highly anticipating this figure. and I can't wait to open it. And I'm thinking he might go on my list for next year. And that's the Finster figure. And he's, if you remember watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, he was the guy who built all the monsters in the Putty Patrol. It's just a very unique looking character. And I think they nailed it. I absolutely think they nailed it. So I got some other ones. I got my Zeo and Mighty Morphin Pink 2-pack. So I was able to complete the Zeo team now. So I now have 3 full Ranger teams. I got some new Gundam Universe, which I talked about on the last episode. I was really looking forward to. So I got Heavy Arms, and then I got Gundam Exia from the 00 series. Both of them are fantastic. I have opened them. I have been working on some new displays in my room, so I have the new Gundam display up. They look great. And then this has been a theme on the show before.
The
Sarah
return of
Megazords.
Megazords.
So Sarah and I took a trip. We went to Awesome Toys Daytona just on a whim. We had some air conditioning issues and we needed to get out of the house because it was just too warm in here. And
welcome to
on
Florida living.
Yeah. Well, only in Florida do you need to worry about not having air conditioning in February.
In February, people. February.
Yeah. So luckily, it's all fixed now, but we had, almost a week there where we were waiting for parts and stuff to come in. And yeah, I mean, the maintenance guys here did what they could and they did a good job. So I can't complain too much, but we went out to Daytona on a whim and went there and they had the Claw Zord from Samurai. And so that's Zord I've had my eye on. I've never seen one like in person. It was super clean, complete. Like if this was a child's toy, it was well taken care of. It was priced pretty fairly, so I jumped on that. And then, of course, I have one. They have these smaller Megazords that they're doing. Brian, you've got a couple for me, but I was able to find the third one in that series.
Yeah, they're sitting right here, next to me. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those, getting those, because the Lost Galaxy one I have, they're a little bit. So they're about a half an inch to an inch smaller than the monsters, but they still scale well enough that you can have them battling the monsters because
that's cool.
Because the monster line, they did them too big. And so they're like an inch and a half over the Rangers. They just tower over the Rangers. So I was like, oh, this will look great putting a few of these fighting the monsters in them. And they're not great articulation, but they look fantastic they look like the actor in the suit, like. So they're pretty cool. They have limited articulation. They have limited paint. Actually our friend over at MMPR Toys just posted a video today where he was showing the same ones and he
did some customs.
Yep. He painted them up a little bit.
Nice.
And he's not afraid to get in there and paint. I'm still a little tentative with that, but anyway, so I got that small one. I'm really excited about that Claw Zord probably. And I'm really excited about all this stuff. I just, I need more time.
Yeah, I started, we really started clearing out our, we call our hobby room, where I finally have a shelf, like a 5-tier shelf set up on one wall that I've started to map out what's going to go there, Chris. Finally at that stage where, I already know one shelf is going to be dedicated to the DeLorean. So
nice. When you say map it out, I'm not kidding. That's actually what I had to do. I actually drew a diagram of my room and the shelving units I had because I couldn't visualize it without putting it down on paper. Yeah. And I have it on paper and I keep talking about, I say the back wall, the listeners have no idea. You've seen it, but the back wall of my room, I'm redoing those shelves completely. And I have one that I have halfway done. So I'm on my way. I've been over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing like a shelf, a couple shelves a night kind of thing. So I've got one halfway done. I was hoping to get some done last weekend, but we're trying to get out of the house to stay cool. But yeah, I hear you about mapping it out, but I'm really excited to like finish it,
Yeah, I hear you. I have, I put together one street scene diorama. I'm going to have a cartoon diorama to go right next to it. They'll be right next to each other on the top. And then underneath, I'm saving a space for when they do announce the sewer diorama to go underneath, for the turtle stuff. The street scene's going to have all the movie stuff going on, movie turtle stuff, and the cartoon's going to have all my toon stuff. And then I'm also going to have a shelf for Marvel. It'll be an end game kind of shelf. Going to probably get some foam and get really into it, but I'm going to try to create a bit of a look from the final battle sequences of the film. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll have to compare.
Yeah.
We'll have to compare, because I know I'm putting together, I'm going to do something similar. I think it's interesting, you and I both talking about getting our shelves set up, and what I really want to get to a point of is being able to kind of like you said, get some foam and make it look more than just some figures on a shelf.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like building the look and feel of it, and trying to create the scene, and that's the fun of it, you know. And well, let's switch over to kind of what are you looking forward to most, Chris?
So I'm looking forward to the G.I. Joe Classified Wave 5, which is the Storm Shadow and the Spirit. They say July, but recently it seems like everything's been coming a couple months early. So that, and then of course we talked about it earlier, our Mafex Cap and Thor from Endgame.
Yep. Me too. That's probably what I'm most looking forward to, is those two Mafex figures, as well as my eventually the Hot Toys Ahsoka and Maul that should be coming this spring as well. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. But one thing we always have to worry about is that fear of missing out, or FOMO attitude, which we want to spend the next rest of our time today talking about. And we've kind of alluded to it in our past shows, and in this show itself, we've alluded to it a couple times. But I do want to give a little background on this concept of FOMO before we talk in relation to collecting in particular. The concept of FOMO, or fear of missing out, is a unique term, actually. It was coined back in 2004, and actually started to be used extensively back in the 2010s, is really when it started to become a more of a phenomenon. Not surprised, because in 2010 we started getting something called social media that started to pervade all of our daily lives and became very common, and the social networking sites that came out of that time. It eventually actually became an official word. Actually, FOMO is a real term. It's a term that was actually made into the Oxford Dictionary in 2013. And actually, in response to that becoming an official term, psychologists started getting into it and starting to look at what this fear of missing out means. Some actually described it, and I quote, a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences where I'm not, where I'm absent from it. And that sense of fear of missing out when others are experiencing. And this constant desire to be continuously connected to what others are doing. And this is tied all into psychology. And it's a fairly relatively new phenomenon in FOMO. And it's really something that's kind of a feeling that happens in multiple times and multiple occurrences, and in an episodic kind of feeling. And it can happen and have a change or effect on our state of mind. And it some kind of leads to this feel of a deeper sense of being inferior, or even feel of loneliness if we're not a part of it, right? And these are the kind of things that can lead to some compulsive behavior, right? So fear of missing out is not only this feeling, but it could also relate into causing us to be compulsive of, oh, I need to go and buy this. I need to go and get this, or I need to go and have this experience because I'm missing out. And that need to belong to something that's happening. And we actually gave it a real meaning. And it really started with our attachment to social media, but now has gone into other physical realms and other things that we do. And some of the after effects that we can feel from this fear of missing out is really a lack of sleep, or this emotional tension. and it can have some negative effects on our physical well-being and obviously add to anxiety. So these are some things that fear of missing out can be really tough, and these are all pulled from real psychological studies I'm talking about here. These are things that have really been studied over the past 10 years or so, since fear of missing out has been considered an official term and having official meaning back in 2013. So, Chris, what do you feel about that? How do you feel about all of that, knowing some of the history of what that term means?
First, thanks for that. That's some really good information, and it gives us context to kind of dive into this with regards to collecting. Obviously we've all probably felt FOMO at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to collecting, but we've all
Absolutely.
felt that, and we've all, you hear the people say, people present their best foot forward on social media, so you're only seeing the best aspects of their life,
Right.
for some people and that kind of stuff. But that totally makes sense if that's where it started, but it's expanded from there, and now it seems that's a term that I hear a lot, and it's probably, I think maybe in the last 5 years is when I start, really over the last 2 years, I've heard it a lot. So it's interesting information. And I think there's a lot we can kind of discuss going from there with regards to collecting and how it can drive collecting. And I also want to say that it doesn't, while it is overall probably a negative term, I do think there can be a positive aspect to it. And we can kind of touch on that when we
Sure.
get there. But yeah, so I mean that's kind of where I'm at. I think maybe we should talk about maybe what collecting normally in quotes is, because there's no normal way to collect. Let's just be fair.
Yeah, let's be
Versus
fair about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
versus collecting due to FOMO, right? If you're
right.
collecting strictly out of like fear of missing out.
Typically what you'll see with collecting, if there's a fear of missing out, the reason you'll know that it is FOMO related is if later on you're selling that same collection to move into something else because others are doing it. That's a good indicator for me that FOMO led to your collection. And I think of that with some of my friends who are deciding, like, you know what, I don't really want this stuff anymore. Like, and I'm like, okay, but then they're going to collect something different, and it's because they're seeing someone else collect it. And I guess the idea that they've been collecting this other thing for so long that they see that, it's not as exciting anymore. Well, did you collect it because you wanted, and we talked about this before, did you collect it because you really wanted the item, or did you collect it because you saw everyone else was collecting it and it was a hot commodity, and you didn't want to miss out on that experience of collecting this hotly sought after item? And since it's not hotly sought after and it's easily found now in the stores, is it as exciting to you anymore? And then if you're going and selling the item and then saying, oh, well, everybody's really after this stuff now, I'm going to go do this now. That's how I see it sometimes in a sense of collecting.
Let me give you an example that I think works perfectly in this situation. Funko Pops.
Yes.
Like Funko Pops was the thing for a long time. And we joked in my text group that we've joked about, when is the bottom going to fall out? Because we've been saying for years, oh, the bottom's going to fall out eventually. We got to be, because Beanie Babies was like a flash in the pan compared to Funko Pops. Funko Pops, I thought, was going to be like Beanie Babies, and they've been here much longer than Beanie Babies ever were. But now, like you've seen all the stores kind of shrink the space that they dedicate to that. And I just don't see the buzz around Funko Pops that I used to. And I think you're right. I think people have started to move on. It's not as exciting. And I'm not saying that because you decide you're going to part with something or you move out of collecting something that it's necessarily FOMO, but I definitely think that can be a component,
I agree. Yeah. I think some people do it because of FOMO, but then some people do it for other reasons. Yeah. I'm just saying that FOMO is, I think, one of those reasons why someone may shift their collecting, is because of their outside forces, of seeing what others are doing and wanting to be in that crowd. Like I was just talking about from the psychological standpoint, is that fear of missing out in that experience, shared experience with someone else who's collecting something similar.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And the other thing with FOMO is how often have we, let's say you're not a completist, and it's hard to be a completist in anything anymore, but
This is true.
let's say that you're not, but let's say, there was a run of something and you liked the three of the four. How many times have we picked up the fourth because you're like, well, it's an incomplete collection, right? That's fear of missing out. I've been there. I've done that. I don't really like that fourth figure, that fourth character. I'm not really fond of it. It's probably not going to be prominent in my display if it up at all. But I'm like, well, now I have the complete set, so I won't feel later like, oh, I'm missing. I have moved away from that. I think part of it too, while we're talking about this, it helps to kind of talk about it, so then we can recognize these behaviors. And I know for me, it's been healthy to I've talked about like really, I was only Star Wars and maybe a little bit of Marvel for a long, long time. And then I kind of moved out into some other things that I had interest in for a long time, but just decided I was going to stay focused in Star Wars. But I've also had to, while I've done that, look and say, am I, I don't need to have all of it.
You don't need Constable Zuvio.
I do not need Constable Zuvio, and I will tell you, I do not have a Constable Zuvio. Well, that's kind of like, we can talk about, FOMO and being a completist, right? So,
right.
You do have people out there, and I have friends that they want to collect every Star Wars item, that's TVC or Black Series for Hasbro.
Every one of this character, or every
Yes.
one of this film, or every one of this sequence in the film, so I can create the whole diorama of that scene. Like there are lots of different ways of framing it or looking at it.
Right. And, like we said, I don't think anybody can be a Star Wars completist anymore. I think that went out the window a long time ago. But so
unless you're Steve Sansweet.
Well, even him, I'm sure he's missing, but yes, I hear what you're saying. But, you want to have a full run, a complete collection. And I get that. Right.
Right.
But how much of that, when we get into some other things that maybe aren't, like we talked about I'm drawing a blank on his name now. The Wookiee character from Book of Boba Fett.
Black Chrysanthemum.
Yes. So, people are like, so I like there's a line there of being a completist and being like, I need this because if I don't get it, my collection isn't complete kind of thing. It's a weird fine line there, I think. And obviously being a completist is a whole another level. I stopped trying to be, because I was for a while with Star Wars, with the vintage collection, not necessarily with the Black Series, with the 3 3/4, and I stopped, so it's it's hard to say when you're a completist if one is driving the other.
And I asked this question when you were in that zone of being a completist on any certain type of collection that you were trying to complete. Did you feel a sense that you had to do it because it was an expectation that you had to have everyone in that moment because you, to be cool, to be a part of that cool club, you had to have it?
No, it wasn't part of that. For me, it was that I might want that character more down the line. Like I might regret not having picked up that character down the line, because right now maybe I'm kind of lukewarm about it, but then down the line, I want that character. And
well,
now
that's the difference.
Yeah,
that's the difference between fear of missing out, in the sense of the traditional sense of fear of missing out because of wanting to be a part of the cool crowd, right? Of wanting to be in a part of something and not feeling left out of that part. In this sense, you were more so feeling like, I don't want to miss out not having the item to do something I want to do. That's a little bit different. right? That's not a sense of fear of missing out in the traditional term that we're talking about in the sense of a FOMO. So that would be more of a fear of not having that item to complete whatever you wanted to do, right? So I think in that case, there are some different variations, right? So I do like that you clarified that, and that's why I asked that question, because I think what's interesting there is the FOMO isn't so much sociological in that sense. It's more psychological for yourself, not so much environmental to the crowd that's collecting with you.
Yeah, I'm glad, you kind of bring in that distinction there. I do think that there is certainly still, maybe not in the traditional sense, but in the, maybe another sense, there still is an element of FOMO to me, maybe wanting that because, later on I won't be able to find it and then I have to pay more on eBay and I'll be kicking myself. But it's, yeah, I like how you put that. One is sociological and one is psychological. And here's what I'm going to say. Like, I think this is something that just kind of needs to be said. Hopefully you're surrounding yourself with people that don't pressure you to be part of the crowd, right? That they're okay with you not being, I have a great, I've talked about it on the show several times. I bring them up almost every show in our text group. And the one thing that I love, and this comes from Arnie over at Star Wars Action News, he said from the beginning, he's like, I don't care if your collection is one figure or every figure, it's still a collection. And
exactly,
if it's important to you, but you having everything doesn't, there's no such thing as a quote unquote true fan. I hate when people throw that term around. Well, you're not a true fan of this, or you're not a true fan of that. That's sociological, right? And if you're hanging out with people like that, and that's your collecting group, I would ask that you maybe reevaluate things, and that's the thing I like about our group. It has nothing to do with that. Like, you do you, and I'm going to encourage you to do you, and you're going to encourage me to do me. We might not agree on all the on all the figures and are they cool or are they good or whatever, but we all support each other and there's no pressure there.
Yeah, it's all about understanding and valuing your individuality amongst the group dynamic, and understanding that you have individual likes. Yes, are they influenced by others? Yeah, it's going to be influenced. But also understanding what your true likes and dislikes are, and not having others impose their will upon those choices. Now, the good sign that you're, it's almost like a warning of like a good sign you're in a good collecting group is when you say, oh guys, I just found this newest blah 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 figure, do you think I should get it? And if they say, well, do you have something in mind for it? Or does it fit with what you're trying to do? Or how is it going to work in your collection? And if you can't, and if they're asking those questions, that's a good group, because they're making you decide for yourself whether you really need the figure or not. And that's when you're deciding, am I getting this just because I feel like it's a cool figure and I don't want to miss out just because everyone else is buying it? Or am I buying this for a purpose in my collection for what I want to collect? And I think it's important to know that distinction and to have that kind of support. And I think that's important.
Yeah. So I wanted to make one other point about like collecting with FOMO, but before I go there, I think that you've kind of opened the door to where I think we really kind of need to go next. And that is like social media, right? Because that's what's driving this.
Oh, of course.
Social media has really, and we've seen it across a lot of different things. It really kind of drives this mentality. And so when you're talking about that, we get involved in toy groups and we watch toy reviewers, and there's toy channels and there's Facebook groups and there's YouTube channels and all that stuff. And that obviously plays a part in the FOMO as well.
Absolutely. And like you said, and has said in the past, this first mentality, right? It's like having that reviewer that's paying that extra money to get something imported from another country because it was made there, so they can have it to show to everyone first and get all the likes, get all the posts, and feeling like they're in the it crowd, right? That they're part of that community. And if they're not getting it first, then they're they're getting that FOMO real hard, right? They're like, if I'm not getting it first, then I'm not getting into that. I'm not connecting to that community, and I'm not pulling off what I need to pull off. And social media only continues to push that, because every reviewer, every individual who's trying to start up a channel is trying to beat the other one out on who gets an item first, who reviews it first, who has all the items, who can talk about them. I mean, it's just that constant back and forth on standing out from others, but also showing that they're a part of the community and they're the leaders of that community.
That is true, but I think there is one important distinction to make, and that is, so for instance, with YouTube, right? There's the thing called, we hear about it all the time from people who are full-time YouTubers or even part-time YouTubers, and that's the algorithm, right? You constantly hear people like, or thumb up the video because it gives me, it helps with the algorithm. And so I think there is an important distinction to say that some of these reviewers who that's how they make their living, this is what they do full time, right? They have a channel, and I'm not just talking about some guy who just randomly puts up a channel and reviews something, but people have been doing this for a long time. Those guys, they have to get it first, right? Because if they don't, then their channel gets buried.
Valid.
So I don't think that that's necessarily a FOMO thing, but I think that these channels have played into the FOMO thing, because then it whips up a frenzy in the community. Like, oh,
that's fair.
Did you see that this is out now? So and so reviewed it. So that person who reviewed that, it might not be a FOMO for them, but other people watch that and like, it's out. I got to go find it. I got to have it right away. And that's something like,
oh my God, they're already out in this city. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I used to, when stuff would hit, I'd be like, I used to be kind of, oh, that
yes,
hit.
you
I gotta
were.
go,
oh,
I got to find that.
Gosh,
I got to go grab it now. And
oh my
really
gosh. You're bringing flashbacks, Chris, to both of us. I will admit I did it too. But I would get a message from Chris and be like, dude, I just saw on Brickseek or whatever platform it was like, Brian, it is at the Target that is down your street. Can you go there right now? I would normally not ask you to do this, but I need this.
Yeah, I mean, we'd see it, I'll give a great example. And this is the Masters of the Universe, the first assortment case that I chased around.
Oh gosh, yes.
All of Central Florida to different Walmarts.
You drove everywhere.
Multiple times I just missed them. Like, I would look on the thing and they were there. And then I got to that Walmart and they were gone. They sold like while I was en route there. And twice I had the store. They were sitting in the back and the store wouldn't bring them out. And I finally eBayed them and I paid a little more.
Yeah,
That's
you did.
FOMO.
That is FOMO.
Was all FOMO, people. And that wasn't like an external pressure. That was probably more the psychological FOMO of
the name
of
of the show is called Thrill of the Hunt. But that just may as well stand for the other 4 words of fear of missing out, right? So if you take away anything, that is a good indicator, right? There is a thrill in the hunt itself, but then there's also what drives that thrill. And many times it is that fear of missing out, which Chris just described perfectly in the sense of how it's constantly pushed in many ways by things like the YouTube reviews and the different unveiling of figure releases and where people found them on their hunts through live video feeds and things like that. But yeah, I mean, and I think that and I love a thing you wrote down here in our notes that I want to bring up is what adds to the FOMO behavior is not just that, but another factor is the cancel pre-order piece. I love that you wrote that here, because I think that the canceled pre-orders only create more want, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's been something that's, we've talked about it. We've joked about it. It's happened to us, and then you have really hot things that come up where you're like, if I don't get it on pre-order, I'm never going to see it in the store. you know, specifically exclusives, because I think that actually,
oh gosh.
I think exclusives in the toy collecting community is probably the original source for FOMO and collecting.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. And you know what's funny is I've totally gone Zen on a lot of things in recent, and you have too on a lot of things. And I think what's funny is I knew I found Zen in my collecting with TMNT when I walked into a Target. I think it was last weekend or weekend before last, and they had 4 or 5 of the Channel 6 News Crew exclusive sets just sitting there stacked up on each other. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I walked on. And that was the exclusive SDCC release from NECA that's only at Target. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. The FOMO in me was like, I need to buy this now. I'm never going to see this again. Oh my God, I found it in a store. This is crazy. All of that's playing in my head as I'm holding it. And I'm having that little like tense feel in my hand. It's like shaking. And I'm like, should I get this? Should I get this? Should I not? Oh my God. What if someone else is looking for it too? Huh? Then I could help somebody out. But you know what? Do I really need to? And then after I had this internal discussion for about 10 minutes as I walked around the other sections of the store, I'm like, it's okay. It's still going to be in the store. Others can find it. It's not my responsibility to buy it for someone else if there's not someone I know right off the bat that needs it. I don't need to buy it just so someone else doesn't get it that I don't want to have it, that I don't want to have it like a scalper. It's okay. Just leave it there. You don't want it for your collection. You don't need to buy it. That was my internal monologue.
Yeah, you know, you talk about an internal monologue, and I have one as well. You know, you have that back and forth with yourself. And I do think that we've both kind of gotten Zen. And one of the things that, you know, I'm going to mention him again, Arnie, my friend Arnie has said, like, look, if you're not having fun collecting,
Yeah.
you probably need to reevaluate why you're still collecting. And I think there can be times, you know, especially over the last 2 years where we've had these supply chain issues and, you know, pre-orders have been kind of messed up and canceled and stuff. You know, obviously I think there can be times in the hobby where it can get a little bit, I don't want to use the word stressful because, you know, I think real world issues today put a lot of perspective on a hobby of collecting child's toys, you know, child's playthings, as the intro says.
That's right.
It puts a lot of perspective there. But if, you know, you'll have those times where I won't say it's not fun, but there's a little bit more anxiety around it. But if you're not having fun overall, right? And I think that also goes for how you store your collection. Do you have room for your collection? Do you
Right.
have room to display your collection the way you want? Right.
Yep.
For me, I'm not a huge fan, and this is just me personally, of having a huge collection. If I have to go buy a storage unit and store my collection in my storage unit, because I have literally no room to display anything. Right. Now,
Same.
I am fortunate that I do have a room, an entire room to display my collection. Right. But if I didn't have a room, maybe I would have a smaller collection or something like that. And I try and be very conscientious of not having too much stored, if that makes sense. Because I think that can all lead to, you know, it not being fun. And then it becomes, are you doing it FOMO? And we talked about the first mentality, but along with that, if you're in a toy group where it feels like a competition mentality,
Yeah.
I think you maybe want to reevaluate that group. I think you know, like, I like being around people that are supportive. But I never feel like it's a competition with my friends of like, or with you, you know, like, oh, Brian, check this out. I got this, you know, like we got to one up each other. And there's groups out there where it's like, I moderate a GI Joe group. And you know, sometimes you see that out there, you know, where people get into this competition of, oh, I got this. Did you get this? You know, and again, that goes along with the first. I think those two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but you know, toy companies also know what they're doing, right? So there's a ton of research and marketing that goes into these things, and obviously,
They do their research too, and they
yes,
know about psychological ways of connecting. Marketing, half of marketing is organizational behavior and understanding why behaviors happen certain ways and what attracts the minds of individuals. I mean, a lot of psychology majors go into the world of marketing. It's a common connection.
yeah, and I think that, you know, when you look at toy companies and you also look at the model, the way that they do things. So I'm a couple of examples here, right? In the original vintage run of Masters of the Universe, they kept running those figures, those original figures, up to a certain point, but they kept running them for a couple of years, right? So you could get
Mhm.
into the line at any point and be able to go back and get some of those old ones throughout the entire run of Star Wars. The figures that they released
Yep.
for Star Wars were available all the way to the end of the line. Now, granted, they might have been a little bit harder when you got to the Power of the Force, you know, those last 17, but they did have those on those cards too. And so that was the way it used to be. They would keep producing the line. Maybe not some of the bigger vehicles, like those might be a little bit harder to find, but you could get the figures. Well, now it's not done that way, right? You miss out. Your only hope is that they reissue the figure, you know, something like an archive series, or maybe, or
Exactly.
they go back and they do like a repaint where they redo the face, you know, like they use they update the figure with the face print tech, right? That's the only way to get it. Otherwise, you're paying on eBay, and I think that that's kind of driven it. The exclusives. I mean,
And
I
there's
think
one
that
part and there's one part I want to piggyback off of what you just said
yeah.
is we they reissue a figure. You also have that community that gets angry that they're reissuing that figure because they're like, well, you missed out on it. You know, you shouldn't be able to have the figure that I have. And that only continues to amp up that FOMO attitude. And it only adds more to it. And it only helps validate it because of their feeling that, you know, others shouldn't have the same opportunity I'm having because they missed out.
Well, that's very much like exclusives. Like, well,
Hmm.
you didn't put in the work. Like I put in the work. I went to this, I went to that. I was on Brickseek, I was on that. You didn't. Well, who's to say they didn't put in the work, right? I mean, you
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
and
and at the end of the day, are you buying it for yourself or are you just buying it because you can and you want to show everybody else you can? I mean, and that's the difference between different type of collectors. People who collect just to show that they're collecting, people who collect for a reason of personal enjoyment.
yeah,
And I think that's really what I think is important to understand. And I do want to um, start kind of wrapping up our thoughts on this and starting to come kind of to our own individual thoughts on this matter. And for me, when it comes to FOMO, I have to say that I think, you know, I think it's positive for the companies, and I think it's positive for I think when you're starting out and collecting, it can help you get connected to the community. But I do think after you've been collecting for a while, it can be a bit toxic. And I think it's something that grows into a toxic attitude, but it's something that can begin as something of like an elixir, an exciting thing. It can drive you and be this kind of you know, endorphin, and get your endorphins going and really get you excited. And but then later on can become something that impedes your life or your excitement, and can be a bit toxic. So I see FOMO as something that grows over time to become something that's difficult and that can separate you from the things that you enjoy. That's how I see FOMO, at least.
yeah. That's, I like how you put that. I do think that FOMO is a more long-term thing. Of course, you can have FOMO in the moment. I mean, we've all had FOMO where we should have bought. maybe I know in my early days of collecting, I'll give this example. Like I didn't have the disposable income I have now, right? So
Of course.
you had to make choices. And so sometimes you left something behind, not because you didn't want it, but you couldn't literally responsibly afford it, right? And I'll just put this as a disclaimer. I'm not advocating anybody go into debt for collecting or not put food on the table or whatever. You have to have your priorities in line. But in my younger days, I couldn't responsibly afford that. So I would leave it behind and you'd go back and it's not there, it's gone. And now you got to pay for it on eBay. Well, of course, you're having a little bit of FOMO because you did actually miss out. You legitimately missed out, right? And I think that in my adult days, now that I do maybe have that disposable income, sometimes, I'll remember that, be like, oh yeah, I'm going to pick that up because I do want it. I'm just going to get it now, even though I'm spending a little bit more because I'm finding everything at once. Midnight Madness, for example, that's a good, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that was, how much of that was driven by fear of missing out. That was definitely a sociological.
I almost bought the big Millennium Falcon on one of those. I found a picture of me near the register with like 20 something figures in a basket, and a Millennium Falcon like sitting on the floor in front of me. And now that I'm where I'm at now, I'm kind of happy that I didn't buy that Millennium Falcon. For a long time I was like, oh, I should have bought it. I had it in my hands, it was right there, but then as I've grown in my life and gone through different experiences, I'm like, you know what, I couldn't afford it at the time, and I made the right choice. I shouldn't be mad at myself or have that fear just because I didn't buy a toy. You got to have perspective at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's where I was going when I said, it can be a good thing because you can look back and say, okay, I didn't give into the FOMO, right?
Exactly.
I didn't give into it. So, and I also think that, you can look back and it helps appreciate what you have. And that's one of the things that this is kind of where I'll leave my final thoughts. And one of the things that I've been doing is trying to just appreciate what I have, right? Because I have more than a lot of people have.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, I'm talking about, in this instance, I'm talking about my collection, right? But I need to we get so caught up in, oh, what's coming, what's new, what's announced, what's going up for pre-order. It's just a blur, and you get inundated with all that and you forget to enjoy what you have. Now, as I've been redoing my room, going through stuff, there's some pieces that I don't have room, but I still love, like, those Galoob micro machine heads of the characters.
Nice.
I love those. The action fleet. I always have my action fleet displayed because I love those. But you need to find those, you need to enjoy what you have. It's not always about, and the FOMO drives just getting stuff to get stuff,
Exactly.
And there is that dopamine hit that you talked about, right?
Yep.
But scientists will tell you, you can never have, when you have an experience, you have the initial experience, that's the biggest dopamine hit you'll get. From there, it's diminishing returns from there on out, because you cannot recreate the first time for any experience. You just can't.
It's true.
So you're chasing that hit, and you need, so I think it's important to step back. And this is where I've been with my collecting. Step back, enjoy what I have. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to still pursue stuff, but I'm really starting to kind of pull back a little bit and trying to, where do I want to focus? I don't need the 600th version of Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really focused on, what do I want my collection to look like? How do I want to display it? I want to be able to go in there and just enjoy being in that room. And I think it's important to not let the fear of missing out drive your collecting.
I agree. It's the experiences we should treasure and enjoy. The experiences of when we first saw the items or experienced buying or leaving that item behind at that moment. It's the experience of just being able to hold it in our hands and see it. but then it's the experience later on in life, to sit down and look at all that you did get, regardless of those that you didn't, and to enjoy what you do have. Because as you said, not everyone has that luxury. And to be able to sit there and enjoy whatever type of collection you have is a luxury. And we should all be happy that we even have the opportunity to talk about missing out on such trivial of things in life.
Absolutely. Enjoy, I think for most of us, the reason why we collect is that connection to those things that bring us back to our childhood, right? Whether you had that toy as a child, and you're able to, whether it's a modern interpretation or perhaps even the vintage, you're going back and getting that, or whether it's from a TV show or a property that we watch, right? This is all based around nostalgia, right? It's taking us to in a lot of ways, a simpler time, because we didn't have the weight of the world. So it's an escape for me, right? That's why I love going in my room. I can go in there. It's an escape. And I think we just need to keep that in perspective. So I think we've talked about some really good ideas here. I hope that, we've kind of helped clear up FOMO a little bit and what drives it.
Help people understand a bit better, how it affects us in different ways, especially how it can affect us as collectors. And I know I have enjoyed talking about this topic, as well as catching up with everybody on our Toy Fair experiences this year. And I look forward to connecting with you guys at our next show. And we'll be talking to you guys soon. Have a good one.
Well, Brian, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Come back next month to hear us talk toys and collectibles on Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast. Until next time, we wish you good luck on your toy hunt.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, we would love a 5-star review on iTunes. You can find Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast, on Facebook at Thrill of the Hunt Collector Podcast. There you can interact with us and find links to our other social media channels. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this show are those of the hosts and belong solely to them. This podcast is not affiliated with any of the toy companies or licenses mentioned in the show. This show may not be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without express written consent from the hosts.